Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Humanities Center Brown Bag. I'm Jamie Goodrich, the director of the Humanities Center, and it's my pleasure today to introduce Haiyong Liu, who will be our speaker. He's a professor of Chinese linguistics in CMLLC and also the director of the linguistics program. He arrived at Wayne State in 2004 after completing his PhD in linguistics from UCLA. His main task upon being hired by Wayne State was to build the Chinese program. Before that, he received his MA degree in linguistics from the linguistics program at Wayne State. He did his undergraduate studies at Peking University in China with a major in English literature and linguistics. His main research interests are in Chinese syntax, acquisition, and pedagogy. His research methodology is mainly using general linguistic theories to make sense of what happens in Chinese, mostly phenomena that have been considered particular or idiosyncratic. On the other hand, he has been using data from and analyses of Chinese to help improve general theories in linguistics. His decades-long experience of teaching Chinese as a foreign language has offered him new perspectives on his native tongue that would have otherwise been overlooked. Almost all his research topics come from the questions his students have asked or mistakes they have made while learning Chinese. Besides Chinese language courses, he also offers courses on Chinese linguistics and culture. And he has recently published on topics related to Chinese counterfactual expressions, quantifiers, adjectival intensifiers, nonverbal communication, and conditional clauses. His papers have appeared in Asian language and linguistics, studies in Chinese linguistics, and linguistics research. The research on animacy that he's presenting today has been supported by the Office of the Vice President for Research at Wayne State, and the title of his paper is The Effect of Animacy on Mandarin Chinese. And so with that, I will let Professor Liu take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Jamie. And thank you, everybody, for coming to my talk. I think I accidentally chose online. I really wish I could do it in person. I think I randomly chose something, but it was too late when I discovered this. And thank you very much for coming. And so what I do, as Jamie has mentioned, I got a lot of research topics from my students. And also, of course, I've got a lot of ideas from my colleagues. So in the audience, I have a lot of my colleagues too. So the topic of my talk is called the animacy effect on Mandarin Chinese. So the first thing is, let's talk a little about what is linguistic animacy. We understand animate, something alive, something has a soul, something that can breathe. So every language, for one sign for every language to have animacy is that every language distinguishes who and what. You know, you only use who on humans, use what on non-humans. So this is the first thing we noted about animacy. So it's really important for us to distinguish what is human, what is alive, and what is not alive, what is non-human. And also in English, for example, only humans deserve gender distinction. So we have he and the she distinction only for humans, or maybe your pets that have been personified, so something like human-like. And then for everything else, we have it. It can be a desk, it can be a car, it can be the air. So in English, what is human, what is non-human matters in terms of a pronoun choice. And one of the reasons for me to start this project is I've been struggling with distinguishing English he and she when I speak. Because in my native tongue, we don't distinguish the he and the she. We only have ta, that is for everything. He, she, it. And it's really difficult for English speakers when we speak English to keep track. Oh, Mary is a she, Peter is a he, and the president, the he, you know, the first lady is a she. So it's a So I thought it was my own mistake. I've been trying so hard to take care of the issue. I know English doesn't have plural. I mean, we don't have plural singular distinction in Chinese. We don't have tense, but I somehow overcame those deficiency. But I just still have trouble with he and she distinction. So it makes me feel, I start thinking, why is this such a stubborn problem for me? And I realized that finally my epiphany is that it's not my problem. It's English problem, not my problem. Because English is so weird. English distinguish he and gender only for he and she, nowhere else. You know, English doesn't have gender nouns, like French, like Arabic, like Spanish. But English has only gender distinction for third person singular, he and she. So I feel that when I speak English, it's really like a traffic trap. You are cruising, and all of a sudden, you really have to distinguish Mary is a she, Peter is a he. It's really unpredictable. So I really think English should be responsible for my mistake. And then, so it really, we have trouble with he and she. It doesn't mean, it's too easy to say that just because we don't distinguish this, therefore I have trouble speaking this. But also, I'll show you later on that Chinese doesn't have the word it, but I have no trouble using it. So it's, I think, it's really, you cannot just say we have trouble with something just because our native language does not have it. And also, I'm working on the gender issue with an undergraduate student, Sarah Strauss. She just won the university undergraduate research program award. So her project is to study English being a genderless language, but there's still some bias in speakers when assigning, when it comes to assigning gender. So for example, a ship can be a she, your motherland can be a she, and but usually people assume a truck driver being a he, and the God usually is he. It doesn't matter what the religion is. And also we're talking about the new phenomenon, the AI phenomenon. So for example, everybody knows that there's a chat GPT going on. So what's the gender of ChatGPT? ChatGPT is very smart. It's we can think like a human, but still we cannot assign ChatGPT a gender. So we did some little research. About a quarter of the speakers think ChatGPT is a he, but 15% think that she is a she, and about 70% or so, 60% think that it's it. So it's a very interesting. We said we distinguish gender only for highly sentient beings. And ChatGPT is really smart, highly sentient, but still people cannot decide on the gender, and the majority still prefer to use it. But on the other hand, we have Siri. Siri is a she, for sure. No one will doubt. So what determines, so AI and ChatGPT and Siri are both artificial intelligence, but why do we know Siri is a she, but ChatGPT is gender, I mean, we don't know, gender neutral, whatever. So, so we are interested in deciding what assigns gender, or is gender assigned, or is gender is claimed. So, and so also because Siri has a name, does that mean that if you have a name, you deserve a gender? If you don't have a name, ChatGPT is not a name, it's an app's name, brand name. So it doesn't have a gender. Or does that mean Siri can speak to you? Is it the voice? Your voice gives you a name, gives you a gender. If you are only in the written form, I think ChatGPT is only on the written platform, I think. Therefore, there's no gender assigned. So naming is really interesting. It's highly related to gender, to being human, to being sentient. So one little thing is very funny. I talked to a vegetarian friend. He said, you will never eat anything that has a name. You never eat anything whose name you know of, at least. It's true. It's just like to name something is so sacred, therefore you cannot eat it, So naming, gender, sentience, being human, it's all related to animacy. And also in terms of grammar, so for example, animacy can determine the grammar word order. In English, for example, you can say professor's map, because professor is human, is animate. But if you say map of the professor, it sounds a little bit odd, because if you use of structure in English to show possession, the possessor must be non-human. So you cannot say map of the professor, but you can say map of the world. So whether something animate or inanimate matters in terms of English genitive form, possessive form, word order. And also, animacy determines verb choice or predicate choice. So for example, in English, Tom is a person, is animate. You can say Tom is easy to read, means Tom is a he puts his heart on his sleeve. He is really to read. Where Tom is eager to read. He's an eager reader. But you cannot say the book is easy to read. Though you can say the book is easy to read, but it means something slightly different. But you just cannot say the book is eager to read, because book is inanimate. How can it have the eagerness to read? So you see, you think that's funny. That's like a world knowledge. So how can a book read? But the real world knowledge really helps children to learn the grammar. So after children see the differences, what is possible, what is not possible, they figure out that, oh, the animacy really plays a role. And after realizing the role animacy plays, they will learn the sentence structure. They will learn different predicates like easy and read, eager and easy. So animacy can help guide children to use their real world knowledge, learn their grammar. And also, so in 1970, so we understand now that animacy is a gradient concept. So in 1976, Silverstein lays out animacy hierarchy. So on the top of the animacy hierarchy is I or we, highest animacy, with the highest animacy, and then the second person pronoun, and then third person pronouns, and then demonstratives, and then proper nouns like the White House, Wayne State, Detroit, and then nouns related to human, and then nouns that are animate, like a cat, bamboo, trees, and then the lowest on the hierarchy, inanimate, the desk, bus stop, whatever. So it's a very interesting, if you think about it, everybody has only one I in the whole universe. You know, you see many other he, she, they, you. There's only one I, and that is you. You know yourself the best. So I is always on the top list of the animacy. And then for the second person, it's very interesting. If you call someone a second person, you assume this person can respond. You only talk to things that deserve a second person pronoun. You wouldn't talk to, no one will stop you from talking to a telephone, but people would assume that the telephone will talk back. So this is also very interesting. That's why we talk to ChatGPT with you. But when we refer to it, we don't refer to it as he or she. We refer back to ChatGPT as it. So there seems to be some controversy there. And another funny thing about first person and the second person, that they, by default, they are alive. You only talk to things that are alive, that have a life. So they are always involved in an ongoing conversation. In this conversation, in our conversation, I'm the I and the we. And when I say you, I mean you. You are right here. And then third person is for somewhere else, elsewhere. They don't need to be here. You have to be here, at least in conversation. He or she and they don't need to be here. They can be far away. And they're being referred to, now directed to. So this also tells us that pronouns are always have higher animacy. In order to deserve pronouns, things tend to have higher animacy because pronouns are ranked higher on the chart than inanimate things, than things that do not deserve pronouns. We'll talk about deserve pronouns, really an entitlement. You have to reach certain animacy in order to be pronoun worthy. Okay. So, oops. All right. So let's see. So in general, I've looked at a lot of data, read a lot of literature on animacy. I generalized that there are two major areas where we see the effects of animacy most apparently. The first, that highly animated things tend to be more definite. Inanimate or lower animacy things tend to be less definite. So for example, I or we are the highest on the Silverstein's list. So I is the most definite. I have a name. When you say I, people assume you have a name. Otherwise, you wouldn't say I. In order to use I, you are very definite. You know who you are. You are. And then high animacy. So for example, like just say I saw in it, is usually there's a stronger sense of determined identity. So animus, you have an identity when you have a higher animacy and deserve a name, like the example of Siri and ChatGPT. So at high animacy, humans are have high animacy, and maybe after that, animate things are these things that can breathe, can grow, can think. And low animacy, usually we have it refers to something indeterminate mass. So that's why in English, mass nouns like water, paper, chalk can only have it. They don't deserve any other pronouns. You know, I can be I, sometimes I'm referred to you, sometimes, you know, people refer to me as he, and then, but mass nouns is always it. They're so low on the hierarchy of animacy. They deserve nothing else but it. They don't have plural even. They don't have they. They can never be I. They can never be you. They can only be it. So the definite, usually the higher the animacy is, the more definite the thing is, the better identity we have for the thing. And another thing is the word order. So there seems to be a linguistic tendency. When I talk about tendency, I'm not saying that every language has to do this, but I can show you with data that it seems to be, if there's no other choice, if everything else being equal, languages tend to do this. So for example, in terms of word order, a higher sentiency or animacy generates higher actorhood, volitarity, volitionality, and usually they precede lower animacy nouns. So we talk kind of, we see in the professor's map of the professor example, and also, for example, in Navajo, you can never say the baby kicked the man, because the baby being less intelligent than a man can never precede a man in the sentence. So in Navajo, you can only say the man was kicked by the baby. So this is the way that can put the higher animacy thing, the man, before the baby, the lower animacy thing. So word order and definiteness are the two most revealing evidence for the effects, linguistic effects in human language. And also so another example to show the high animacy and definiteness is in African American vernacular English, AAVE. So for example, the contracted or omitted auxiliary verbs form like is, have, and would tend to follow human nouns in AAVE. Actually, the contracted form does the same thing in the so-called standard English. For human nouns, tend to have, he is, we've, did, or he good. You know, you can avoid the auxiliary. It's because these reduced auxiliaries carry higher information density. They have a shorter form. Therefore, they have their responsibility is higher. They have to carry a lot of information, and therefore they are likely to occur when they're preceded by a non-canonical or less definite inanimate subject. So they really, they carry so much information, they only match with highly more definite nouns, subjects. And later on, we'll say that subjects tend to be actor, initiator, action taker. So that's something we will talk about pretty soon. And so, I mentioned that definiteness, the, and word order are the two most apparent evidence to show the effects of animacy. And sometimes they can be combined together. So for example, in Chinese does not have the articles the, So it's really difficult for the Chinese speaker to learn the English than Actually, the English the and are very unique. A lot of non-native speakers have a difficulty learning the English the and But doesn't mean that other speakers do not have their ways of distinguishing what is definite, what is indefinite. So for example, we don't have the and a distinction in Chinese, but we can use the word order. So in Chinese, anything that comes before the verb by default tends to be definite. Things that come after the verb tends to be indefinite. So for example, in Chinese, if you say car come, it means the car has come. If you say come car, means a car has come. So come car, so it's kind of similar to English, there comes a car. So there comes a car in English. It's funny for you to say there comes the car. It's a little bit sounds a little bit funny, but in some situations it's fine. So in Chinese, things that before the verb tend to be definite. Things that come after the verb tend to be indefinite. So this is the result of combining definiteness and word order. Oops. Yeah, okay. And so we talked about definiteness, and to an earlier position in a sentence tend to be the results of animacy effects. And so one thing about Chinese, which reflects the definiteness caused by animacy, is that Chinese does not have pronouns for non-humans. You would consider this as a very apparent characteristics of the Chinese language. In Chinese, non-humans do not deserve pronouns. I still feel funny that I think I'm the first one to have discovered this. I thought this is really a self-apparent thing, but no one seems to have talked about this. I think just because we never use pronouns on desks or other things, so people have taken this for granted. There are no examples to show you otherwise. So for example, let me give you an example. A and B. I have a classmate. He or she is very good. Good sentence. A is good. B, my classmate, I like him or her, fine. So ta is the universal third person singular pronoun in Chinese. Okay, not a problem. Because classmate definitely is human. And if we move on to C and D, I have a cat. It's very good, or my cat in the object position, I like it. So if you see the question mark, or if you see the asterisk, it means this sentence is questionable. It doesn't sound really fine to the native speakers. So C sounds a little bit odd because the cat is not a person. Therefore, non-human doesn't deserve a pronoun. But if you push it, you can say, oh, the cat is my pet. I really treat it as one of my family members. People say, all right, that's fine. It's still weird, but I understand what you mean. So I think if you use ta, the third person singular pronoun, to refer to an animal, a non-human animal, I assume it's still the same as, in English, you can use they to refer to a single person. You can say Sam is late. They are because they got up very early. Sometimes you use general gender neutral pronoun, but still it sounds funny. I think in English, you say I saw an ant. They are really happy. It still sounds like overcorrected, I think. So I think the feeling of English speakers using they on an ant for a singular is the same as a Chinese speaker using ta, the third person singular pronoun, on an animal. I think that kind of the same feeling. It's okay, but it's weird. Okay. And C and E and F are definitely bad. I have a car, very good. My car, I love it. In Chinese, you just cannot use ta. You just cannot use. You have to say, I have a car, very good. My car, I like. So I will explain to you why this is possible in Chinese. So, but at least I hope I have convinced you that in Chinese, only humans deserve pronouns. Ta for third person. If you're non-human, no pronouns for you. Okay. So fortunately, I'm sure you must have thought, then how should Chinese speakers referring to a car? Do they have to say the car again and again and again? So fortunately, Chinese is a so-called pro-drop language. A pro-drop language means that there can be optional subjects or objects. So for example, in Chinese, if you say I have a classmate, I have a cat, I have a car, very good. This is the okay sentence in Chinese. You can just say, you can omit the pronoun. It's a pro-drop language. You don't need a subject for every sentence. So that's fine. And the second example, what my classmate, my cat, my car, I very like. You can omit the object. So in Chinese, you don't need to mention the subject or the object. Therefore, it's not too much a problem. If we don't have any choice, we do not have a pronoun for non-human things. Okay. Okay. And then the question is, sure, Chinese can get away without using a subject, a pronoun in the subject position or an object, a pronoun in the object position. But why only humans deserve pronouns, but non-humans do not deserve pronouns? English is more generous. English at least gives a pronoun to a cat, to a desk, although there's no gender distinction. But Chinese is one step ahead. They don't have pronouns at all. So it's even worse treatment for non-humans, inanimate things. So there's a general principle called avoid pronoun principle. So basically says that pronouns are supposed to be as empty of referential content as possible. So that means we all understand that the biggest function of pronouns is to refer to a noun that has been mentioned. So, but pronouns beyond the referentiality function pronouns can also tell you the person, whether it's a first person, second person, or third person, gender, man, woman, or gender neutral, or number, singular or plural. So pronouns not only works as a indexing device, it also gives you some information of person, gender, and number. So, but ideally, in the real world, ideally, we should not rely on pronouns so much. So also this can have, in order to help you understand this, we can imagine that in the real world, we don't have pronouns. We have desks, we have tables, we have humans, we have cats, but we don't have he. He is a man-made thing. I think it's more like, what's the word? The math thing with the geometry, more like a geometry, variable. So in the real world, there are no pronouns. Pronouns is a result of human intelligence. We use this to facilitate our speech. So, but ideally, if we can avoid the pronouns, that'll be better. That'll be a better idea. And also for inanimate things, they don't have gender. They don't have identity. So in order to pronouns, gender, identity are very important. So inanimates tend not to have those things like water, air, they don't have an identity. And also it's very interesting, many languages do not have pronouns, like Chinese, do not have pronouns for non-humans. Instead, they use demonstratives. So for example, I think that I forgot what language, but quite a few languages, they can say, I bought a cat, I bought a desk, this is really good. I bought a desk, I really love this, instead of saying it. So pronouns seems to be more inclined to humans or higher animate things. So now I have a question then. We know English has it, and it has two functions in English. It first as a dummy subject, it rained. It just because English does not allow you to drop the subject, you cannot say rained. But in many other languages, Spanish, Italian, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, you can just say rained without the subject. But in English, English has a really rigid rule. Every sentence must have a subject. If you really don't know what the logic subject is, just use it. It is there for the sake of assigning a subject to every sentence. And also it is a personal pronoun. So for example, in English, I have a desk. It is very expensive. I like it. It refers to the desk. At least this can refer to something more solid. So English, because English does not allow null subjects or null objects, you cannot say I have a desk. It's very expensive. I like. Okay. So English has two kinds of it, the dummy it and the pronoun it. So what I want to argue is that probably the two its are the same. English has only the dummy it. Because as we have seen in Chinese, in many other languages, inanimate things really do not deserve pronouns. So probably I can argue that in English, it is very expensive. I have a desk, it is very expensive. I like it. The it is really there just for the sake of being a placeholder to assign to have something in the subject position, in upper position. So eventually, English really doesn't have a bona fide pronoun for non-human inanimates. We have it used there basically just because English does not allow you to have null subjects or null objects. So I think English it is the same, dummy it, expletive if we use the terminology, okay? Okay, so we've seen that in Chinese, non-humans do not have pronouns. And also another effects of the animacy in Chinese that Chinese is adversity passive. So for example, Chinese word order is SVO, subject, verb, object. He hit me, he hit me, he hit me. And then you can use a passive voice. A passive voice structure, like it makes Chinese to more like OSV. So more like he hit me, I was hit by him. You have to say I, bei is a passive voice marker. I bei, third person singular, hit. Fine, I was hit by him or her, and I was sued by him or her. That's fine. So the original order, normal Chinese order is SVO, but in passive voice, it become O, bei, SV. So the object in passive voice comes before the subject. But what is funny is that in Chinese, passive voice can only be used for adversity verbs, to be hit, to be beaten, to be sued. If the last two sentences, you see the question mark and asterisk, they sound funny in Chinese. I was loved. It sounds really funny. If you ask your Chinese friends, can you say I was loved? You say, oh my God, it sounds very violent. But why was I loved? It sounds, I was loved. And also it sounds really funny in Chinese. You say, I was praised. You can say the teacher praised me, but you just cannot say I was praised by the teacher. I think this similar to the Navajo example. The baby kicked the man is bad, but the man kicked the baby. The man was kicked by the baby is better. I think the same effects in Chinese. If you say I was loved, it sounds very funny. Okay. So why adversity passive? So languages prefer sentient and animate agents as subjects. So we prefer subjects that are action takers. And then they're definite, and they have definiteness, and they should precede the indefiniteness. We have seen this already. So, definite things, things with higher animacy tend to come before lower animacy things. So they tend to be more definite. So cross-linguistic languages prefer to have the subject before the action taker, before the affect passive action receiver. And also the Chinese word order is VO, but the passive voice as O, the object before the subject, which increases the possibility of violating the animacy hierarchy. And so it sounds a little bit in facilities in Chinese for you to use a passive voice for a more positive verb, like to love, to praise, because the word order is switched, and therefore the hierarchy effects has been violated. Okay, and the same thing happens in Japanese, in Korean too. But Japanese and Korean have SOV word order, but in their passive voice, they have to move the object before the subject. Therefore, Korean, Japanese, similarly to Chinese, they have adversity passive. You can only say I was beaten. You cannot say I was loved. Okay, and then the third effect. So adversity passive, pronoun worthiness in Chinese. Third effect of the animacy effects in Chinese is the verse distinction between human and people. Humans and people. So first, some background knowledge. So Chinese doesn't have plural for nouns. So we have, you say one desk, two desks, three desks, five desks, we don't have plural. But we don't have a men suffix. The men suffix is only used for affiliated humans, things that have higher animacy. So for example, in Chinese, you can say 学生们, which means students, fine. 朋友们, friends, fine. But if you say 敌人们 enemies, it sounds a bit funny because men can only be used on groups you want to have affiliation with. You don't want to hang out with enemies. And also criminals. It sounds funny in Chinese if you say 罪犯们 criminals, because 罪犯 is not something you want to have affiliation with. And chicken is not even human. 鸡们 sound really funny in Chinese because men can only be used on humans, as humans that you like. And 桌子 desk, inanimate, they don't deserve men. So Chinese doesn't have plural, but we do have something like a men. A men is really picky. Men can only be used on human nouns that we feel that we like them. Okay. But the Chinese, men is also a way of forming plural in Chinese pronouns. So in Chinese, 我 means like, or I, 我们 means we, 你 means you singular, 你们 means you guys, you plural. 他 singular, third person singular, 他们 means they. So men is a suffix that can help pronouns to formulate the plural form. But men is really selective when it comes to modifying nouns. But there's one thing we should keep in mind is that nominal plurals are different from pronominal plurals. So for example, nominal plurals basically can be a result of multiplication. Desks, you can imagine many desks. Books, many books, the one book, like I say, the popular, book, you say millions of copies, you can use books and animals. But pronouns, plurals, are a little bit different because when I say we, it doesn't mean that a multiple I. It only means we, but we are different, but still we are we. And also, so you guys is not necessarily multiplication of a second person singular. So I want to say there's some difference between the concept of plural for nouns and the concept of plural for pronouns. And again, we see that only higher animacy things deserve pronouns. Therefore, kind of pronominal plurals tend to be used more likely on humans. Okay. So let's some trivia, some linguistic trivia. So 60% of languages use suppletive. Suppletive means you create another word. Like in English, you have I and we. If you only look at I and we, they're not related at all. They're not like desk and desks. You know they're related. Or like tree and trees. So English uses suppletive forms. 60% of languages use suppletive forms for first person plural for I and we. And we and I are considered different lexeme, different words. They share some, they do not share any morphological resemblance. The other 40%, including Chinese, the minority, like Chinese, use suffixes for plural forms and for first person pronouns. I think English is more scientific because when you say we, it really not a plural of I. It's more like different group I'm affiliated with, but they're not copies of me. So I don't know. It's just something for you to think about. And then it's very interesting. Every language distinguishes human and people. People is a plural form for person. So in English, if you look up the human and person and human people, there are 3 different words in the dictionary. So for example, although no English dictionary would put desk and desks as 2 words. They tell desk in the plural form desks. But every English dictionary will put person, human, people as 3 different entries. And also, so for example, you see the simple pattern in many languages. For example, in English, as person versus people, the singular and plural are different. In Russian, we have Natasha here, but you can take my word for it. It's true, they're quite different. They're not related. Yeah. And in French, quite different. And in German, quite different. So the singular person, the plural person and people are 2 different words. The same thing in Chinese. So for example, in Chinese, we have the word 人, which can either mean person or human or even people because we don't have plural form. So in A, when you say 人吃饭, that can be interpreted as humans eat, as species, humans eat. You cannot put the men suffix to 人们. It sounds like a people eat. It's a really weird concept, as if, you know, people would party, but people, like in a generic sense, it's funny for you to say people eat. You can only say humans eat. As mammals, in order to survive, humans eat. But people eat, it sounds weird. So in this sense, 人 without the men, it's more like biological sense as a species. But if you add the men, it means people, and then you have to choose the verb that can match people. So B, you can say people left, that's fine. But with the men, you can never say it can never be translated the humans left. So before the verb, if you add the men, the suffix to 人, it can mean either human or people. But C, in the post-verbal position after the verb, Chinese does not distinguish 人 and 人们 anymore. Everything, you can just say 人. So you can say she hit people or she hits humans. That's, you know, it's a crazy concept, but grammatically it's sound. So basically we can see that before the verb, Chinese need to distinguish 人 and 人们, humans and people. But post-verbal position, Chinese does not anymore. Just 人 can be interpreted either as a human or people. So, what I argue that preverbal position is the preverbal position is more for something more sentient with higher animacy and deserve more identity, specification. So probably that's why we need to distinguish humans from people. Human more biological and people more humanistic. But in the post-verbal position, which is saved mainly for lower animacy things, less specification needed, we have only 人. We don't need to distinguish human person anymore, because that's position for less specification. All right. Okay, so let's just wrap up my talk. So I explain to you what linguistic animacy is, and we see the effects of linguistic animacy in human language, and use 3 examples in Chinese to see that a pronoun worthiness, adversity passive, and distinction with human and the people, to show that how animacy plays a role in the Chinese grammar, especially the 3. I mean, people have talked about adversity passive in the past, but I think I'm the first one to relate this to animacy hierarchy. And for the pronoun worthiness and for the men suffixation, I think I'm the only one, the first one to bring this to people's attention. Okay, thank you, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. I see a hand already there up on the screen. So, Haiyong, do you want to stop sharing your screen so we can all see each other, and then
Sure.
Let Enid go ahead and ask her question.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I saw Enid has a question. Oh, hi, Enid. You're muted, Enid. You're muted. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Supposing somebody says to their son, "What happened to the money?"
Mm-hmm.
Then the son has to say, how would the son say, "I lost it"?
Very good. Very good. I hit something. We have a special structure, the ba structure. So we talk about passive structure, but we do have a ba structure. You can say what ba qi. No. I mean, yeah, sure, that can help some. Then you just keep saying 钱. I cannot think of a better. Yeah, you just don't say it. You say, where's the money? I lost. Just I lost. Yeah.
Oh,
where's
okay,
the money?
so,
I lost.
So you don't have to say, the son doesn't have to repeat money again, or should he?
No, you don't need to. You can just say, I lost. Where's the money? I lost. And this is, imagine, this is very similar to the Facebook like. You know, in Facebook, you can just say like.
Yes,
You don't need to say like what, you just like. You don't need to say who likes, just like. Yeah.
Oh.
So that can help the sun get away, I guess. Just get lost. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Other questions for our speaker?
Okay.
Hannah.
Oh, that was a very unique presentation and quite insightful. And you made mention that usually God is referred to as masculine, also masculine singular. I would like to, the Hebrew text writes that God, or the Hebrew is Elohim, which is a plural, and he made the man plural,
Okay.
male and female created he them and called their name Adam. And then Eve was in the man and was separated after a deep sleep. And the man called, where God called them Adam, the man called her Eve.
Okay.
So that's
all right. I'll look into it. It's very interesting. Okay. But it, very good. Thank you. I'll look into it. But the thing, very good. There's pronominal mismatch everywhere in language. So for example, English, the royal we, the king refers to himself as we. And so there's the number mismatch. The king is singular. And also, you know, in English too, you know, if I saw Hannah now looking very pleasant, seem to be under the weather, say, hey, how are we doing, Hannah?
Yes.
I can use plural too, right? When I refer to you. And also you can refer to yourself as third person. You know, Dad is not very happy today. You're talking about yourself. So the number mismatching happens. But the interesting part is that why? What's the purpose? I know in Korean, very often, first person singular and person per plural can be interchangeable. Yeah, I'll look into this. It's very interesting.
I
Yeah.
like your example. When you said it, it comes to mind when you say, how are we doing? That's kind of extending your heart, your spirit out and uniting with that person and being one with that person in spirit. But thank you very, very much.
No problem. Thank you for the question. Oh, Andrew?
Yeah, Haiyong, thanks for the interesting talk. You know, it's interesting to me how much can really be communicated, or how much is communicated in a lot of languages simply through assumed context or understood context, whereas in English, we're practically twisting ourselves into pretzels to make everything definite and make everything match, right? And Chinese is a great example of how you can avoid having to say so many words simply because it's understood, it's part of the context. There's no other option, you know, right? Yeah. You've been talking about somebody, so you don't have to use a pronoun for that person or that whatever, dog, cat, over and over again, because you just, it's already known. There's no need to say it, and it works in the language. Whereas in English, he did this, she did that, he did this. What does he want? He wants to, you know, such and such. They want to, all of that. It's really unnecessary. And it's interesting that English has this need to use so many words that really are unnecessary, and a lot of other languages don't use.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I wouldn't go that far to criticize English. English is as perfect as any other language, but people do distinguish grammar-based language and context-based language. Japanese, Chinese, Korean, for example, are very typical context-based language. A lot of information is from the context, but English is more like a grammar-based language. A lot of information is in the grammar. And I know you speak Japanese. You know, to use the right pronoun can be a problem sometimes. How to refer yourself, and it's really complicated. And I heard a Korean friend that told me that Koreans do not hang out with outside their group because they're afraid of using the wrong pronouns when they have a new encounter. So it's really important. So I think, I think whether you use context or grammar, the purpose is to make the communication smooth. So I think we have different techniques to reach the same goal. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Natasha?
Thank you so much, Haiyong. It was really interesting. So in your talk, you mentioned that sentience has something to do with whether something is animate versus inanimate, and you draw the line between humans and non-humans. So humans are the only sentient beings. Everything is not, but it's not really, I think, a universal. And other languages can include other categories in the animate. For example, I know in Russian, animacy is important grammatically for nouns of one specific declension class that has both animates and inanimates. Animates, nominative and accusative pattern together for inanimates, and for animates it's accusative and genitive, for instance. And what's included in the inanimates is not just humans but also animals. So I'm wondering how, so there's probably a lot of variability. What is it, cultural is considered. And just, can I also add one last thing? In Russian, everything deserves a pronoun. It has grammatical gender. Even inanimates, you would use he, or so third person pronoun. It's masculine, feminine, and neuter. And if you say something like, I lost my purse, which is feminine, then you would say she must be, she must be, I don't know, under
thank you.
the table.
I agree. We can talk more about this, but I think it's very interesting. It's true, because I think because Russian is gendered, so I think that being gendered, the language might have a different scenario for pronoun assignment. And also, so for example, I think in German has 3 genders too. There's neutral. And in German, so for example, for the preferred pronoun system, people wouldn't mind being referred to as S, the neutral. In English, you have to use they. Sam is a good student. They use they. You cannot use it. You can, even if you can be gender. I mean, there are 2 choices, they and it in English, but you can only refer to, you use they. They are whatever. But in German, you don't need to say Z. You can say S. So Hans is a very good student. S is whatever. So I think it's really language specific. So so I think gender has something very interesting to contribute to the pronoun choice. We can talk more about that, but I can tell you one thing. So as I said in the very beginning, for Chinese English speakers, we struggle a lot with the gender of the pronoun. But I asked several Chinese learners of Russian, of Spanish, French that distinguish gender. They say that they struggle less for pronoun gender because there are many other things to take care of. So but that's why I said English pronoun gender distinction is really like a traffic trap. You thought you were fine. All of a sudden, you need to distinguish he and the she. But if you speak Russian and Spanish and French, you have to constantly do the calculation. So the personal gender choice is lesser an issue. Yeah, but we can talk more about that. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Eunice, it's Eunice's sister.
In Korean, if someone asks you, is this pen yours? You have to use 2 words. That thing is not mine. Is Chinese the same way? In other words, we don't use it either in Korean, but we always say that thing if we want to say it.
Very good. Yeah.
Do they do that in Chinese?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. It's a very Desiree. Now I remember. A very good question. Very good. We do. We can say, yeah, sure. Yeah, I think we do. You can say that thing not mine instead of saying that is not mine. But it's very interesting. Now you see, I said that in many languages they don't have personal pronouns for inanimate things. They use demonstratives. That is a demonstrative. The same thing.
Yeah.
It's a very common strategy. Yes. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
can say that is not mine instead of saying it is not mine. Yeah. Mhm.
Mhm.
But you
making me think-
cannot say it is not, it's just bad. You cannot say it is not mine. You cannot. You have to say that thing is not mine. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
making me
okay.
think of the French, like c'est à
Mhm.
moi or c'est à toi, you know, like
Mhm. Yeah.
or this is mine. It's a very similar construction, isn't it? And that's
Yeah,
a,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, a
exactly.
demonstrative, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a demonstrative. It's a pronoun too. There's a connection too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It looks like Natalia's got something again.
Okay, Natasha.
I wanted to ask about the genitive, your genitive examples, the map of the professor.
Yeah,
Right?
not every speaker agrees with that, but I copied it from a textbook. Yeah.
But it seems like there are other examples that it's pretty straightforward. You can say the wife of the professor or the photo or the research of the professor. Are they better? It seems like there are certain types of possession that work better with that than others, but I'm not quite sure if my
Yeah.
intuitions are correct.
It
Does it have
always
something to do
troubles
with
me.
alienable and alienable possession type thing?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's difficult for me to learn when to use of structure. So I copied examples from the article I read. I don't have too much intuition for that. Do other English speakers agree? What do you think? The wife of the professor, but wife and professor are both animate, so it's not too much a problem.
But
Human.
we wouldn't say in English, we wouldn't say the wife of the professor. We would say the professor's wife.
You said the professor's wife?
Right.
Oh,
We
yeah.
would never say the wife of the professor.
Okay.
I could see saying the wife of the professor, but not something like the book of the professor. Like that definitely sounds wrong to me. It would definitely be the professor's book.
Well,
But the
the wife
picture,
of
the
the
photo,
if
the
you
photo of
said
the
the wife-
professor.
if you said the wife of the professor, it would sound like you were a foreigner. Because English speakers do not say the wife or the dog or the hat of the professor. They say the professor's hat. It's always apostrophe S for
Mhm.
a possessive case.
Mhm.
It's never such and such of, not in English. If you
Yeah,
say of,
yeah.
mhm,
Well,
Another-
in
Mhm.
some
Go ahead,
cases,
sorry,
you
sorry.
can say the love of books is
Yeah,
absolutely whatever.
yeah.
You can say that, but
Mhm.
you can't
but that's not
you
possessive
can't
though.
say you can't even say the research of the professor. It just sounds very strange.
Really?
You have to say the
cannot-
professor's
Right.
research.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So, but you agree it's related to animacy. Animacy matters. What can be the of thing? It's related. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
But the love of books, I would like to remind you, is not the same thing as the professors, etc.
but
The love
love
of books
and-
is nominative,
Yeah. They are both inanimate, so it's not a problem. Love of the book.
right?
Book and love are both inanimate. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the genitive is complicated English of structure. So I think it's borrowed from French. I think that's my impression. It's borrowed from the French de structure. English didn't used to have it.
No, in oui, de. Right,
Mhm.
correct. In
Mhm.
French, it's always de.
Mhm.
La femme du professeur,
Mhm. Yeah.
which for English speakers was difficult at first.
Oh yeah.
For me, it was difficult to say la femme du professeur. That seems like so many words when all you have to do is put an apostrophe S.
I see.
after it.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm working on a translation with a native French speaker. And one of the things that I have done is had to go in and add apostrophe S because she always wants to translate the genitive of this, of that. And I'll say, no, I think we need apostrophe S here sometimes.
I see.
And so I think that's an interesting conjecture about it coming from French because
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
her
yeah,
go-to mode. She
Yeah,
always wants to go there.
yeah. But for wife, it's also a very, we call it inalienable possession. It's a very unique kinship term. So wife itself will cause a lot of particular structures too. So yeah, because wife is a family member. So it has special, you can say mom, you can say mom told me instead of my mom told me, but you cannot say professor told me, whatever. So it's a family members usually have different behaviors in terms of grammar.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
What if you have another example of inalienable possession, but if it didn't
like kinship terms and body parts. In English, say he hit me in the eye. You don't say he hit me in my eye. But you cannot say he took the book instead took my book. So I think my book and the book are different. But hit me in the eye, mean my eye. He grabbed me by the arm. You don't say he grabbed me by my arm because arm is body part.
Right. That's
and I
true.
think in German, whether your pants are on you or off, you use different word, different genitive. Your pants on you is you use one thing. When it's off you, use another genitive form. So inalienable.
Exactly. I think that he hit me in the eye comes from the tendency in Latin languages not to refer to one's body parts as my. You have to refer to them as the.
It's a body part. Okay.
Right, as a body part as opposed to something that belongs to the person.
Okay. And body part is kind of an animacy and inanimate. It's body part, but still human. But still an arm, yeah, it's arm, but it's on a human. It's interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe that means that we in essence aren't physical. Maybe it means the essence of who we are. Just as you said, how are we doing? That's another relationship.
Forming. Yeah, we are one group. Yeah. So pronouns, you can play with pronouns. You know, play now. You can play with pronouns. Yeah.
I don't know this. I don't know if this is germane to the topic, but the very, very difficult thing about Korean, which is I think different from other languages, you're discouraged from using the word you.
Yes, I know. In Japanese too. Yes, it's impolite.
Yeah. It's impolite, right? And it's really hard for English speakers.
I know. Like English, like yeah. Like if you talk to a professor and say, "Professor, please forgive me, I forgot my homework." Oh, professor, are you coming today? Is professor coming today? So you have to, you to show more, respect. Yeah, I think it's similar to English. Like, daddy's not very happy today. Things like you change your person. Yeah. So yeah. I think like similar to English. Some English speakers can use y'all. Some people don't. I think you struggle with in English too.
Right.
But can I ask? For Korean, what I don't understand is if you're talking to someone, you're having a conversation, and you want to say, "Are you going to the concert?" How do you say, "Are you going to the concert?" without saying you?
If you're acquaintances, you call the person by name. That's why they always ask your name so they can refer to you by name. So if someone were talking to me and asked me, "Are you going somewhere?" they would say, Denise, she. She is a, it doesn't mean she, it just means Mr. or Miss. It
Yeah,
can
yeah,
mean either one.
Yeah.
It's very important also to know their position in life. If you're a doctor, then you would say, doctor, you don't use you say doctor going to the movies, boss going to the movies,
Mhm.
um, us, um, child going to the movies. When you're talking in school and you're talking to the mother of a child, you don't say mother, you say the child's
Mhm,
name
mhm.
and the mother.
Yeah, yeah. Like in English, you can refer to your wife as mom. What is mom doing tonight? You know, it's a mom refers to the child's mom. Or in English,
Right.
you can say someone is acting up. It means you are acting up. You are making trouble. You can.
Right.
So yeah, you know yeah. Mhm. Yeah, but in Korean, true, it's really risky if you use the wrong pronoun. Yeah, because you have to
Right.
show politeness, distance, everything is in a package.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've all learned that pronouns are slippery. And I think I understand why you said Haiyong earlier. It's best to avoid pronouns.
Uh-huh.
Add a question mark next to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, I'd like to close out the brown bag now if there are no other questions, and ask us all to give the presenter a round of applause for a really wonderful talk. I really
you very
enjoyed it.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Haiyong. It was
All right.
great.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.
I'm really
Okay.
glad I came. I really enjoyed the talk. It was very interesting.
Okay, I'm glad. Thank you very much, Dennis. Okay.
And thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Professor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.